Hanspai on the South African west coast has held a special attraction for a long time, but there is much more to it than shark cage diving. It has also become a model for marine conservation, where dwindling numbers of penguins are offered a new lease on life. I'm Ashley Dowds, and this is my Africa, my home. I dig deep into the past to make sense of the present. I explore the natural environment to find the driving force behind my continent's attraction. But it hides another face, an elusive side filled with excitement and packed with adventure. A small town at the foot of the Overberg mountain range in South Africa is no stranger to being in the spotlight, which is surprising because at first sight nothing much happens there. It oozes a laid-back lifestyle, but this impression is deceiving. This town rocks in a totally different way. And it all started a long time ago.
This is awesome. These caves here would have been occupied by humans about 80,000 years ago. We refer to them as strandlopers or beach walkers, the perfect hideout or home for these people.
200 years ago, another people arrived. Europeans that left a deep mark in the heart of the region. They were colonial explorers who just could not resist the lure of the unknown. So, most of them never left.
Now, one of the reasons why anyone would settle at any given area is because of the availability of fresh water.
And this perennial fountain was named Gansbaai, or Goose Pond, after the abundance of wild geese that lived here. With time, the settlement grew to become a fully fledged town in its own right.
This is Gansbaai on South Africa's Western Cape province. It's well known for its rich fishing grounds, to a scale right now that's almost industrial. The funny thing is, what I know of Hanspai has more to do with conservation and sharks, cage diving, and a big operation that's really driving the tourism industry at the moment.
The popularity of Gansbaai saw the town explode and burst at seams. As a result, it spread out around Danger Point to Birkenhead Bay, Frans Kraal, Eiland Kraalsmond, and then Kleinbaai, or Small Bay, where rowboats were once launched to one of the best-known landmarks in the region.
This is the gateway to Dyer Island, famous for its deadly predators that patrol the shallows between the mainland and the rocky outcrop, about 4 kilometers out to sea. It also played a role in the early development of the region in the early 1800s.
Surprisingly, this small island was named after a slave, Samson Dyer. Quite strange for those times. But the rich history of this region has been carefully noted by a retired teacher and regional historian.
Few people know the history of this region better than Oom Jan Pape Fourie, who set up this museum, the Strandveld Museum. So this island just off the coast here is named Dyer Island after quite a big personality who made money off seal skins and what else was it? Guano.
These three people said that he was from West Africa. He worked on ships for the Americans, and the Americans dropping on the island, he collected seal skins. After 2 years, he came back to them and told them, listen here is your money you paid for me was a slave. And they said, I'm a free slave now, so him off.
Dyer's Island is now protected by law. The seals may not be bothered, and the jackass or African penguins can breed in peace. But there's much more to it. This is where the big guns hang out. A landmark building, just a few kilometers west of the Strandveld Museum, has been named after one of the world's most magnificent predators. This is also the headquarters of a company that gives back time and resources to the environment it thrives on. This is the Great White House.
A couple of months ago, when I visited Gansbaai,
I'm at a vibrant operation that put this little town on the map. Businessman Wilfred Schivel has invested heavily in protecting the environment on which Gansbaai's ecotourism inevitably depends. And his interest in the region goes way beyond sharing it with tourists. And you do a lot of work in spreading the word for this kind of environmental program that you have.
We've got a captive market for people to influence people. And we also, by the way that we market our product, I think we're lucky to get the people that really care.
People love Jackass penguins, flightless birds that breed along a stretch of approximately 1,800 kilometers along the southern African coast. But their numbers have declined immensely. In fact, without help, they might have disappeared from the African coastline some time ago. At Stony Point, approximately 100 kilometers from Gansbaai, Aloise Lynch, operations manager at Dyer Island Conservation Trust, is one of the driving forces behind conservation measures to help the Jackass penguins. That's the nest we're looking at now.
That's a nest that we're looking at.
That's specifically built.
Yeah, it's purpose-built to actually provide the African penguins with a safe haven for breeding. So it mimics the original nests. They were burrowing birds, so they would have burrowed into the natural guano deposit on the island. And unfortunately, due to guano harvesting, there's very little deposits left, so they can't actually burrow into the guano anymore.
Of all the nests close to the walkway, 1 out of 9 that we counted was a natural site. The rest are artificial nests, and the penguins are taking to it like a penguin to the sea. Gulls are constantly out on the prowl to steal eggs and kill chicks. But apart from this, these flightless birds also have to deal with a whole array of natural enemies.
Predators of penguins range from Cape fur seals, which lies in wait for the penguins on the periphery of the colonies when they come back from foraging sessions. And very interesting, doesn't eat the whole penguin or the whole cormorant. They just take the stomach contents. So they're just after the fish. Sharks also do take them, and the one that's got the biggest impact on the species is us, humans.
And probably the only problem is us, we humans, yes, because we take more than we need and more than we can handle.
Emphasis on the significance of species biodiversity attracts interest from the global community, and the importance of the conservation value of the tourist dollar cannot be underestimated. The Stony Point bunch looks the worse for wear. Once every year, old feathers are replaced with new ones.
And the molt is 21 days long, roughly, and they lose all of their feathers. They regrow them back. So in that 21 days, they can't feed, they can't go into the ocean. They're susceptible to the cold and to hypothermia if they do go in and go and swim.
Some of the penguins have gone through the full molting cycle and boast a whole new set of feathers, something that they show off to those who are miserable under the burden of replacing their old plumage. Joy in the penguin world is having enough food and excellent protection against the cold water of the Atlantic Ocean. At Romans Bay, a pair of beach dwellers is highly upset. Volunteer students are fine-combing the beach for washed-up plastic, but this is where the black oyster catchers make their nest.
We have got lots of birds that are nesting at the moment.
This place is littered with these tiny pieces of plastic. It actually looks like shells, but it's plastic.
Yeah. This is what we call, when we talk about microplastics, this is what we're talking about. I mean, you can see it everywhere here. It's all different sizes. That's a little pellet. And these are the things that eventually causes quite a bit of damage to our marine life.
The breeding pair of black oyster catchers is highly upset by the volunteers that are combing the beach for plastic. Their reason for distress? 2 speckled eggs amongst some dried-out kelp, extremely well camouflaged and very exposed to people and the elements. Tell me about this, because they are exposed to the elements. Surely there's going to be some damage, not just with footsteps and predators, but are exposed to the air, to the sun.
Well, remember that the birds doesn't need to be on the nest full time. It's just majority of the day that they need to be incubated. So mum and dad will go off and they will go and forage, and she will return and she'll sit on the nest, he'll come back. And obviously they've also seen us now. So we've caused a little bit of a disturbance, and that's why it's a quick process. You clean up and you move on. Otherwise we keep them away from the nest for a very long time.
Plastic is an indiscriminate killer, and fishing line is high on the list. To control this problem,
We put out fishing line bins because most of the injuries that we get on seabirds and seals and so on is caused by fishing line.
discarded monofilament fishing line that floats around in the ocean is a death trap for marine life. It has been determined that it can take up to 600 years for these lines to degrade.
That's almost as long as these milkwood trees have been growing here in Stanford's Bay.
This is a fairyland, and the thick coastal forest sustains an enormous amount of life. However, the biggest biodiversity is found in the intertidal zone, a place well worth exploring. It's a pity that so few visitors to this area take the time to discover this world, where snails and urchins rule.
The experience that you can get in this part of the coastline is second to none.
Although most visitors to the area gather here to see the whales, the sharks and the seals up close, those big animals are overshadowed by the sheer masses of bottom dwellers, without which those big creatures would cease to exist. Now this is the flip side, the side that few ever see.
Look at these. I've counted about 7 different varieties of snail just in this small area, which gives a good indication of the diversity of species here and the biomass.
Things happen at a snail's pace here? Not likely. Pink-lipped top shells flee as hungry whelks hunt them mercilessly, while clipfish attack anything that looks vaguely edible.
You know, it always astounds me at how these little organisms can adapt and survive in this kind of transitional zone. You take this limpet here, and how tightly, there it goes there, how tightly it clamps onto the rock. And by doing that, it survives because it doesn't dehydrate. And talking about dehydration, have a look at the seaweed here. During the day, that's going to become like paper, very brittle. But once the tide comes back in again, it goes back to its original state, like those bunches over there in the water.
Pear-shaped limpets have enjoyed the luxury of having their food on their doorstep for millions of years. They're keen farmers that grow their own algae gardens on which they feed. Like a creature from outer space, the mouth and anus of the anemone are surrounded by tentacles that are armed with cells used both for self-defense and to capture prey. Although harmless to people, they're deadly for a variety of rock pool dwellers that may come into contact with these innocent-looking arms. And beware the unfortunate urchin whose shell is cracked by a marauding black oyster catcher. The whelks are quickly on it like a pack of wolves. This is a place where one can sit down and lose oneself in the turbulent world of rock pools. Ruben Mine has explored many of the reefs along this coast with scuba gear, and however hard we try to get an opportunity to take a dip, the conditions just won't give us a gap. Our luck is out. The unpredictable Western Cape weather has a mind of its own.
Hey, Ruben. It's looking a bit like pea soup.
Yeah, no, definitely. The water's pretty dark today, so...
Where does this come from?
Well, basically over the last couple of days we've had about 4 or 5 meter swell that has really kicked up a lot of sediment in the waters. Now, normally the southeasterly wind would clear that up. We've had 2 days, so it is a little bit better today than it was yesterday and the day before. But now the wind switched around again to a northerly direction, so it's just not moving this dark water away quick enough.
Judged from the top, visibility doesn't exceed a couple of meters, making it unsuitable for an enjoyable dive.
You know, Ruben, we went diving in warm water, and I mean, there's a completely different story there because warm water has so much more life. Well, so it seems when you look down at the sea
Do you see much potential in opening up a dive unit here?
You know, if you look at the soft corals and all the different types of corals that they have here, you know, they're bright purples, oranges. It's the smaller stuff on the reef, but the reefs are so much more busier. I always believe that the health of everything on top is determined by the health of the reefs. And having scuba divers here brings that attention to that part, you know, which is the reefs. You know, over here, it's the whales and the great whites, which is always from the surface, always been, and always protected on the surface. But, you know, we have to start taking care and bringing awareness to the reefs of these areas.
Well, the whales have gone back to Antarctica after giving birth in these moderate waters, but this coastline has constant traffic of migrating great white sharks, some of the most feared predators on Earth. Shark Alley. Need I say more? Dyer Island has a smaller sister. Giza Rock is not much more than what its name suggests, a fairly big rock occupied by Cape fur seals. And great white sharks love to eat them. Slashfin is a big ski boat that is used solely for taking tourists to experience shark cage diving. She makes the run to Dyer Island in a few minutes, and then the chumming process starts. A method where fish oils and a few other substances are released into the water. This forms a cloud behind the boat and attracts everything from small fish to opportunistic seagulls to big fish, really big fish.
Yeah, the world's biggest.
Even though this piece of coastline has the biggest concentration of great whites, there's no guarantee that they'll be attracted by the chum. Shark expert Alison Towner has been studying these creatures for a few years now.
Well, the sharks absolutely are not resident. They're actually very transient. They're quite the opposite. This particular spot is where we find them seasonally in the summer months, and usually their residency period in the bay is a couple of weeks, maximum to a couple of months. It can take us hours to get white sharks here. Some days we might not see sharks at all. It really depends on what's going on at the time.
And then the sharks start coming in. Not one, but several of them. The line boys are busy, and a moment's lapse in concentration may see a shark take the bait, something that needs to be prevented as far as possible. The objective is not to feed them, but to present a promise of a meal. The wooden decoy looks very much like a small seal from below and serves as a visual attraction. I raise the contentious issue of association through chumming with Alison.
Here in South Africa, the ecotourism industry is obviously very popular for white shark diving. It all depends on the residency of the animals, and fortunately here in Hanspai, the sharks are very, like we said, migratory. There isn't any sort of long-term residents here that would be sort of exposed to the chumming day after day. There's never been any research that suggests that because of chumming, white sharks have sort of increase their aggression to water users here. But like I say, the saving factor is their transient nature. It is something that we're actually looking into in detail now, using movement data and tagging and tracking to be able to answer those questions a little bit better.
Slashfin, the big ski boat, is anchored in such a way that the wind blows the smell of well-ripened fish heads and guts away from people. Seasickness can spoil the experience, but this menace is often forgotten when the great whites make their appearance. And then it's my turn to get into the stainless steel cage.
This is not the first cage dive that I've done, but it's certainly the most exciting because the sharks have been coming in thick and fast. We haven't had to wait for too long. So I'm hoping we get some good sightings down there in the cage.
Okay, hold the mask in the face of me, sir. Hold it. Okay, thank you. Tight enough?
Neptune has heard my desires. The fins of a shark are worth approximately $100 US, but its value in tourism can be as much as $2 million US, 20,000 times more alive than dead, and tourism doesn't kill sharks.
How do you put a value on it? You're bringing out hundreds of people essentially each week and showing them this predator in the wild. It has such a big conservation message behind it. You know, it's a platform for non-invasive research, which, you know, if done correctly, can be really quite an effective monitoring tool. And given the threats that the great white shark faces along the entire South African coastline, such as, you know, longliners, shark nets, artisanal fisheries, we really need to do something to keep this animal valuable.
As magnificent as they are, I wouldn't like to be in the water without a cage with a great white shark. But you really get the sense of a primal predator, something that, it's not evil because there's a presence, there's a grace about a great white, and it's fantastic to watch. But when you're sitting there in the murky water, visibility is low and it just sneaks out of the peripheral vision like that, and suddenly it's on you. It gives you a bit of a fright. That's what I'm left with. Respect for the great white. You know, one of my favorite sights at the end of a long day is the sunset over the ocean. Second favorite, sunset over the mountains. Here at Walker Bay, you get both. It's utterly astounding, the views from the cliffs at the Kelders looking over at the sunset. Hey, maybe the third favorite is the sight of sunset glinting off a glass of Chardonnay, or Shiraz. My good mate Ruben Mayen has organized the glass on the cliffs overlooking Walker Bay. I'll go meet him now. Cheers, guys. I'm sorry to drag you out to the office again, but here we are. It's tough in Africa. Hey, look at the sunset. What do you have to put up with?
Yeah, it's terrible. No, definitely we're in paradise, and we're blessed to be able to be out here every single day and do what we love.
Hey, man, with wine from these hills, them Dyer hills, you've got my back above water and underwater.
Yes,
thanks,
mate. Anytime.
I'll be back. Within a small space of time, and inside a tiny stretch of the map along this side of the coastline, I've encountered eccentrics and ecological heroes that would fill an adventure novel. What a surprise to stumble upon the old world values, the Hanspai Museum that was created by Jan Pape, or the adventurous fortune hunter turned environmentalist Wilfred Schivell. His shark and whale research, among other things, has attracted some of the most passionate marine biologists to his project. People such as Alison, Aloise, Ruben Mayen. These people are as diverse as the marine life of the region, yet they share a common goal: to keep this tiny spot along the Atlantic Ocean like true custodians should. And that's really just a tiny part of the story that Hanspai has to tell. Like any good story, you just want to keep coming back for more.